I stood in my parents' doorway on Thanksgiving Day, holding my homemade green bean casserole, watching my entire family seated around their dining table. 12 beautiful place settings with elegant name cards sparkled under the chandelier light. Uncle Gary, Aunt Linda, my brother Todd with his wife Amanda, their twins, even distant cousins, Jessica and Marcus had assigned seats. My 8-year-old daughter Emma tugged my coat sleeve, whispering, "Mommy, where do we sit?" My 6-year-old son Tyler pressed against my leg, confused. There were no places for us. None. We had been completely erased from this family gathering. The shock hit me like a physical blow to my chest. After driving 3 hours with my children, after spending my grocery money on ingredients for the casserole everyone always requested, after carefully coordinating our arrival time with my mother, Patricia's specific instructions, we had been deliberately excluded from our own family's Thanksgiving celebration. My mother glanced up from her perfectly arranged table, her silver hair styled in fresh curls, wearing her best burgundy dress with the pearl necklace my father gave her for their anniversary. Her expression remained cold, almost satisfied, as she took in our bewildered faces. "Patricia!" "My father," Robert mumbled from behind his newspaper, not even bothering to look up. At 61, he had perfected the art of avoiding conflict by pretending it simply did not exist. "We didn't have enough chairs," my mother announced matter-of-factly, cutting into her turkey with surgical precision. "There's leftovers in the kitchen if you want some." The dining room fell into an uncomfortable silence. My brother Todd, 30 years old but still unable to stand up to our parents, stared intensely at his mashed potatoes. His wife, Amanda, 28, and always immaculately dressed, barely suppressed a smirk as she sipped her wine. Their twin boys, age 5, continued eating without seeming to notice the tension. Uncle Gary, my father's older brother at 65, cleared his throat nervously and attempted his usual peacekeeper role. "Well, maybe we could pull up some chairs from the kitchen," he suggested weakly, though his voice lacked conviction. "The seating arrangement is already set," Patricia replied sharply. "We planned this very carefully." That word, planned, sent a chill through my spine. My eyes swept across the elaborate table setting again, taking in details I had missed in my initial shock. The fine china that only appeared for special occasions gleamed spotlessly. Crystal wine glasses reflected the warm light from the chandelier. An expensive autumn centerpiece featuring orange roses, gold leaves, and miniature pumpkins created a magazine-worthy display. Everything had been orchestrated with meticulous attention to detail. This was not a last-minute oversight or an innocent mistake. This was intentional. Emma's lower lip began to tremble as the reality sank in. "But Grandma said we were invited," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tyler, always more direct than his sister, spoke louder. "Why don't we have name cards like everyone else?" Amanda finally looked up from her plate, her green eyes glittering with barely concealed amusement. "Some people just aren't family priorities," she said sweetly, then returned to her meal. The casual cruelty of her comment hung in the air like smoke. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, shifted uncomfortably in her chair but remained silent. Cousins Jessica and Marcus, both in their 20s, exchanged glances but kept eating. I felt my children's confusion and hurt radiating beside me, and something fierce and protective surged within my chest. "Mom, you specifically told me to come at 3 o'clock. You asked me to bring the green bean casserole. You said the family was gathering here." "I said there was a family gathering," Patricia corrected, her tone suggesting I had somehow misunderstood something obvious. "I never said you were part of it." The words hit like a slap across my face. My own mother had just publicly declared that I was not considered part of this family. In front of my children. In front of everyone. Todd finally raised his head, and I caught his eyes for a split second. The guilt written across his features told me everything I needed to know. He had known about this. He had known we would be excluded, and he had said nothing. "There has to be some misunderstanding," I said, though my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. That's when I noticed it. On the mahogany side table near the window sat a small leather folder. The corner of a white paper peeked out, and I could make out handwritten text. My heart pounded as I recognized my mother's careful cursive writing. Moving closer while everyone pretended to focus on their food, I glimpsed enough to understand the devastating truth. It was a seating chart, dated 2 weeks earlier. Names were written in neat rows: Patricia, Robert, Todd, Amanda, the twins, Uncle Gary, Aunt Linda, Jessica, Marcus, even space for Amanda's parents who had decided not to come. And there, at the bottom, were 3 names crossed out in bold red ink: Diane, Emma, Tyler. My name, my children's names, eliminated with decisive strokes of a red pen 2 weeks ago. This had not been forgotten. This had not been overlooked. This had been planned, discussed, and executed with military precision. My family had made a conscious decision to humiliate me and hurt my children on a day meant for gratitude and togetherness. Emma began crying quietly, pressing her face against my side. Tyler's eyes filled with tears, though he tried to be brave like I had taught him. The sound of my children's distress finally seemed to pierce through some of the adults' comfort with the situation. Uncle Gary set down his fork with more force than necessary. "This is wrong, Patricia. These are your grandchildren. They're Diane's responsibility," my mother replied without missing a beat. "And Diane has made her choices." The way she said my name, with such disdain and disappointment, made my stomach twist. What choices was she referring to? What had I done to deserve this level of rejection and cruelty? Robert finally folded his newspaper and glanced up. "Maybe we should all just calm down and enjoy the meal," he suggested in the tone he used whenever family tensions arose. Always the mediator, never the protector. "Enjoy what meal?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay composed. "The meal my children and I were deliberately excluded from? The family gathering we were erased from like we never existed. Drama," Amanda murmured into her wineglass. "Always drama with some people." That comment ignited something dangerous in my chest. I had spent months being the perfect daughter, the grateful recipient of whatever scraps of attention my family offered. I had swallowed criticism, accepted blame, and tried desperately to maintain relationships that were apparently built on conditions I had never been told about. But watching my children's tears fall while my family calmly enjoyed their Thanksgiving feast, I felt my patience finally shatter. "Come on, kids," I said, taking Emma's hand and guiding Tyler toward the front door. "We're leaving." "Good," Patricia called after us. "Maybe next year you'll have learned some respect." I paused in the doorway, my children beside me, the weight of that handwritten seating chart and those deliberately crossed-out names burning in my mind. This was not over. This public humiliation, this calculated cruelty toward my children, this systematic exclusion from my own family, had just awakened something in me that had been sleeping far too long. But for now, I simply walked away, carrying my untouched casserole and my wounded children, while the sound of continuing dinner conversation followed us into the cold November air. The drive home felt endless, with Emma sniffling in the back seat and Tyler asking questions I could not answer. "Why didn't Grandma want us there, Mommy?" became a refrain that broke my heart with each repetition. After settling my children with leftover pizza and a movie, I found myself pacing my small apartment, rage and confusion warring in my chest. Something deeper was happening here. Something that went beyond simple rudeness or thoughtlessness. The level of coordination, the detailed planning, the unified front from my entire family suggested a deliberate campaign against me. I needed answers. The next morning, I drove back to my parents' house, leaving Emma and Tyler with my neighbor Mrs. Chen, who had become more of a grandmother to them than my own mother ever had been. I found Patricia in her pristine kitchen, washing the good china by hand as she always did after important dinners. "I want to know what this is really about," I said without preamble, stepping through the back door I had used since childhood. Patricia did not look up from the delicate plate she was drying. "I think yesterday made things quite clear." "Diane, clear? You humiliated me and hurt my children, And you think that makes anything clear? Your children, she repeated, placing extra emphasis on the word your, as if it explained everything. Your choices, your consequences. What choices? What are you talking about? That's when Patricia finally turned to face me, her blue eyes cold as winter sky. The choice to destroy your marriage. The choice to embarrass this family. The choice to set a terrible example for those children. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Destroy my marriage? Mark was abusive, Mom. He hit me. He threatened the kids. I got out to protect us. Mark never hit anyone. Patricia snapped. Mark was a good provider. A good father. And you threw it all away because you wanted attention. Her words stunned me into silence. Mark, my ex-husband, had been charming and manipulative in public while being controlling and violent behind closed doors. The bruises I had hidden with makeup, the nights I had slept with a chair wedged against my bedroom door, the terror in my children's eyes when their father's voice rose in anger. Had my family really convinced themselves that none of that was real? He broke my ribs. Mom, I have medical records. You fell down the stairs. Accidents happen. The casual dismissal of my trauma, the complete rewriting of events I had lived through, left me breathless. I didn't fall. He pushed me. The police report documents everything. Police reports can say anything. You were always dramatic, always making things seem worse than they were. Before I could process the full impact of her accusations, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Todd appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking uncomfortable but determined. Maybe we should all calm down, he began. But I cut him off. Did you know about yesterday? Did you know they planned to exclude us? Todd's guilty expression answered before his words did. Diane, it's complicated. How is it complicated? Either you knew your sister and her children were being deliberately humiliated, or you didn't. We had a meeting, he admitted quietly, avoiding my eyes. A meeting? What kind of meeting? Patricia set down her dish towel with sharp precision. A family meeting. To discuss the situation. What situation? The Diane situation, Todd said, then immediately looked like he regretted the words. The phrase hung in the air between us. The Diane situation. As if I were a problem to be solved rather than a daughter and sister to be loved. When? Where was this meeting? Todd glanced nervously at our mother before answering. Last month. At Uncle Gary's house. Uncle Gary's house. The man who had suggested pulling up extra chairs, who had seemed uncomfortable with my exclusion, had hosted a meeting about me. Everyone was there, Todd continued, his voice growing smaller. Mom, Dad, Amanda, Uncle Gary, Aunt Linda, even Jessica and Marcus. The scope of the betrayal expanded in my mind like ink spreading through water. My entire extended family had gathered secretly to discuss my life, my choices, my fitness as a person and mother. Without me, without my knowledge, without my ability to defend myself or explain my circumstances. What exactly did you discuss at this family meeting about me? Patricia answered with crisp authority. We discussed your behavior since the divorce, your impact on family stability, your influence on those children. My influence? I'm their mother, a mother who breaks up families, a mother who creates chaos and drama wherever she goes, a mother who teaches children that commitment means nothing. Each accusation felt like a fresh wound. I left an abusive marriage to protect my children. That's not creating drama. That's being responsible. According to you. Amanda's voice cut through the kitchen as she entered wearing yoga clothes, her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. But there are always two sides to every story. Two sides. I stared at her in disbelief. You think there are two sides to domestic violence. I think there are two sides to marriage problems. Amanda replied smoothly. And I think some people prefer playing the victim to taking responsibility for their own actions. The calculated cruelty in her tone made my skin crawl. This woman had married my brother, had been welcomed into our family, and was now leading a campaign to destroy my relationship with that same family. What did Mark tell you? I asked, sudden understanding flooding through me. He contacted you, didn't he? Todd and Patricia exchanged glances that confirmed my suspicion. Mark has been very concerned about the children's well-being, Patricia said carefully. Hez shared some troubling information about your parenting, such as your financial instability, your emotional outbursts, your inability to maintain a stable home environment. Financial instability? I work 2 jobs to support my kids. Emotional outbursts? I sought therapy to deal with trauma. Unstable home environment? We live in a safe apartment where no one screams or hits or threatens. According to you, Amanda repeated, her expression suggesting she doubted every word I said. According to documentation. According to my therapist. According to my children's teachers who have seen them flourish since we left. Teachers can be fooled, Patricia said dismissively. Children can be coached. The conversation was becoming surreal. My own family had constructed an alternative reality where I was the villain, where my abuser was the victim, where my attempts to protect my children were actually harming them. So this meeting, I said slowly. This family meeting about the Diane situation. What exactly did you decide? Todd shifted uncomfortably. We decided that boundaries needed to be set, that you needed to understand there are consequences for your choices, and the consequence was humiliating me and my children at Thanksgiving. The consequence was showing you what family loyalty looks like, Amanda said. Mark is still family. Mark has never badmouthed this family or created problems. Mark deserves consideration. Mark deserves prison. I shot back. And apparently this family deserves each other. Patricia's face flushed with anger. That attitude right there is exactly what we're talking about. That selfishness. That refusal to accept responsibility. Responsibility for what? For leaving someone who hurt me? For protecting my children? For refusing to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't? Responsibility for tearing apart a family? For teaching your children that marriage is disposable? For putting your own feelings ahead of family stability? The twisted logic was staggering. In their minds, my desire to live without violence was selfish. My need to protect my children was destructive. My refusal to enable abuse was family disloyalty. But something else nagged at the edges of my consciousness. This level of coordination, this unified message, this complete rewriting of history, it felt too organized, too consistent to be organic family concern. How often has Mark been in contact with you? I asked. That's not your business, Patricia replied quickly. It is, if Hez influencing how you treat my children. Mark cares about those children, Amanda interjected. More than their own mother, apparently. The venom in her voice was startling. I had never done anything to hurt Amanda. Had welcomed her into the family. Had tried to build a relationship with my brother's wife. Her hatred felt personal and disproportionate. Why do you hate me, Amanda? I asked directly. What did I ever do to you? You exist, she said simply. You take attention away from people who matter. The honesty was breathtaking in its cruelty. Here was the truth beneath all the concern about family values and child welfare. Amanda saw me as competition for family resources and attention. So this was your idea? The exclusion yesterday. Amanda smiled, a cold expression that never reached her eyes. I simply pointed out that families should support members who support the family. Mark supports the family. You tear it down. Mark abused me and threatened my children. Mark loved you and tried to save your marriage. You threw it away, and now you want everyone to feel sorry for you. The gaslighting was so complete, so coordinated, that for a moment I wondered if I had imagined the bruises, the fear, the nights spent hiding in my children's room, because I was afraid of my own husband. But then I remembered Emma's nightmares after particularly violent episodes. I remembered Tyler's regression in potty training during the worst months. I remembered the relief in both their faces when we finally left. When home became a place of peace instead of tension and terror. You're rewriting history, I said firmly. All of you. You're choosing to believe a lie because it's more comfortable than facing the truth. The truth is what we see, Patricia said with finality. And what we see is a daughter who destroyed her family and now expects everyone else to pick up the pieces. I looked around the kitchen where I had learned to bake cookies, where I had done homework at the table, where I had once felt safe and loved. Now it felt like enemy territory, filled with people who had decided my pain was less important than their comfort. My children's well-being was less valuable than their family image. So what happens now? I asked. Now you learn, Todd said quietly. You learn that actions have consequences. You learn what it means to be excluded when you exclude others from consideration. And my children? What did they do to deserve this? Their mother failed them, Patricia said without hesitation. Their mother put her own desires ahead of their stability. Their mother saved them, I replied. And for the first time in this conversation, I felt completely certain of my words. Their mother got them away from a dangerous situation, and their mother is going to protect them from anyone else who tries to hurt them. Is that a threat? Amanda asked, seeming almost excited by the possibility. It's a promise, I said, looking directly into her cold green eyes. I will protect my children from anyone who tries to harm them. Anyone. The weight of that promise settled over me as I walked out of my childhood home for the second time in 2 days. But this time, I was not confused or heartbroken. This time, I was furious, and fury, I was beginning to realize, might be exactly what I needed. The next few days passed in a blur of questions and painful realizations. Every family gathering I had missed, every phone call that had gone unanswered, every subtle exclusion over the past months suddenly made sense. The secret family meeting had not been a one-time event, but the formalization of a campaign that had been building for half a year. I was searching my memory for clues I had missed when Emma came to me with a drawing she had made at school. It showed our family, her, Tyler, and me, standing outside a house while stick figures sat around a table inside. Mrs. Peterson asked us to draw about Thanksgiving, Emma explained. I drew the true story. Her teacher's note was gentle but concerned. Emma seems upset about a family situation. Please call me if you'd like to discuss. That call led to an uncomfortable realization. Emma had been telling people at school about feeling unwanted by her grandparents. Tyler had been acting out in his kindergarten class, his teacher reporting aggressive behavior toward other children who talked about extended family. My children were suffering in ways I had not fully understood, and I needed to document their emotional distress in case legal protections became necessary, which reminded me of something that had been nagging at my consciousness since the kitchen confrontation. Mark's involvement in turning my family against me felt too calculated, too strategic for his usual style. He was vindictive and controlling. But this level of long-term manipulation suggested planning and patience that did not match his typical explosive temperament. I decided to visit my parents' house one more time, not for another confrontation, but to retrieve some personal items I had left in my old bedroom upstairs. Small things. A jewelry box, some books, family photos that belonged to me and my children. I waited until I saw my father's car leave for his Saturday morning golf routine and my mother's Buick disappear in the direction of her grocery shopping trip. Using my old house key, I let myself in through the front door. The house felt different now, less like home and more like a museum of someone else's family. I climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom, which my mother had converted into a guest room years earlier but which still held some of my belongings in the closet. I had just retrieved my grandmother's jewelry box when I heard voices downstairs. My parents had returned earlier than expected, and they were not alone. I recognized Todd's voice and another male voice that made my blood run cold. Mark. My ex-husband was in my parents' house. I crept to the top of the stairs, staying hidden while straining to hear their conversation in my father's study below. The custody papers are almost ready, Mark was saying. My lawyer says we have a strong case based on the documentation you've provided. Amanda has been very thorough, my father replied. She's recorded every incident, every sign of instability. What kind of incidents? Mark asked. The children arriving at family events disheveled. Deanna's emotional outbursts. Her inability to maintain steady employment. I felt my heart stop. What they were describing was not reality. My children were always clean and appropriately dressed when we visited family. I had never had an emotional outburst in front of them beyond normal parental frustration, and my employment had been steady. I had held the same 2 part-time jobs for 8 months, building toward full-time positions. Amanda documented all of this. Mark asked. Photos, notes, dates, and times. She's even recorded some conversations where Diane admits to struggling financially and emotionally. Recorded conversations. I thought about every family gathering over the past months. Every phone call. Every moment Amanda had been present with her phone nearby. She had been building a case against me systematically, creating a false narrative of instability and poor parenting, and the financial records. Mark continued. That's the strongest evidence. Todd's voice joined the conversation. Amanda found discrepancies in the family business books that point directly to Diane. Discrepancies. Missing money. Altered receipts. Amanda has been helping with the bookkeeping since she has an accounting background. And she noticed patterns that suggest embezzlement. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. Our family had a small accounting business that my father had started in retirement, handling books for local restaurants and small shops. I had been helping with data entry and filing for the past year, earning a few $100s monthly to supplement my income. The work was straightforward and legitimate, but Amanda had been presenting herself as discovering evidence that I was stealing. How much money are we talking about? Mark asked. $3,000 over the past 6 months, my father replied. Small amounts taken regularly, but it adds up. I knew exactly which $3,000 they meant. Last month, my parents had accused me of taking money from the business account, money that had apparently disappeared without explanation. I had denied it completely because I had never stolen anything from anyone in my life. But if Amanda had access to the books, if she had been documenting everything, if she had been building a systematic case against me, the possibility that Amanda had stolen the money herself and framed me sent ice through my veins. So we have evidence of financial desperation, emotional instability, and poor parenting. Mark summarized. That should be enough for a custody modification. The goal is not to take the children away permanently, my father said carefully. The goal is to motivate Diane to get help and stabilize her situation. Of course, Mark agreed, but something in his tone suggested his goals might be different from my father's. Although, Todd added, if she continues to refuse family support and counseling, we might have no choice but to pursue more permanent arrangements. Those children need stability. My mother's voice joined the conversation as she apparently entered the room. They need structure and proper guidance. They need their mother, Mark said, and for a moment I thought he might be defending me. But they need their mother to be mentally healthy and financially stable. If Diane can't provide that, then other arrangements might be better for everyone. Amanda thinks a year of supervised visitation might help Diane understand the importance of family cooperation, Todd offered. Supervised visitation. They were planning to take my children away and allow me to see them only under supervision, like a criminal or an unfit parent. Has anyone spoken to Diane about this? Mark asked. Given her a chance to address these issues voluntarily, we tried the intervention approach at Thanksgiving, my mother replied. She responded with anger and accusations. Clearly, she's not ready to accept responsibility for her problems. Then we move forward with the legal option, Mark concluded, for the children's sake. For the children's sake. The same phrase they had used to justify excluding us from Thanksgiving. The same phrase they would use to justify taking my children from me entirely. I heard the conversation winding down and chairs scraping against the floor. Panic flooded my system as I realized they would likely come upstairs or move through the house in ways that might expose my presence. But then I heard my father say, Mark, there's something I want to show you in the garage. Footsteps moved toward the back of the house. This was my chance to leave undetected. But first I needed to see those custody papers. My father's desk sat in the corner of his study, covered with the usual bills and business documents. I searched quickly through the papers, my hands shaking with adrenaline. There, in a manila folder labeled Diane's situation. I found documents that made my worst fears seem insufficient. Custody modification paperwork, mostly filled out but not yet filed. A typed list of evidence against my parenting, including photos of my children that had been taken without my knowledge and annotated with false claims about their appearance and behavior. Financial records showing the $3,000 discrepancy, with my name highlighted as the responsible party. But the most devastating discovery was a printed email exchange between Amanda and Mark, dated just 2 weeks earlier. "The family is on board with the custody plan," Amanda had written. "Patricia and Robert are convinced Diane is unfit. Todd will testify about her emotional instability. I have financial evidence of her desperation. The Thanksgiving exclusion should push her to an emotional break that we can document." Mark's reply was chilling. "Perfect. My lawyer says emotional outbursts at family gatherings are excellent evidence of instability. Make sure someone records her reaction." They had planned the Thanksgiving humiliation not just to hurt me, but to provoke a reaction they could use against me in court. The exclusion of my children had been calculated specifically to cause me distress that could be weaponized in custody proceedings. Amanda's next email was even worse. "I've been altering the business books gradually. The missing money timeline matches exactly with Diane's increased participation in the bookkeeping. When this goes to court, it will look like she was stealing to cover her financial problems. She had not discovered evidence of my embezzlement. She had created it." The final email in the chain was from Mark to Amanda. "You're brilliant. Between the financial fraud, the family testimony, and her inevitable emotional breakdown, we'll have everything we need. Those kids will be better off with people who understand family loyalty." I photographed the emails with my phone, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold the device steady. This was not just a custody dispute or a family disagreement. This was a coordinated conspiracy to destroy my reputation, frame me for crimes I had not committed, and separate me from my children permanently. The sound of voices returning to the house sent me scrambling up the stairs and out through the back entrance I had used as a teenager when I missed curfew. I made it to my car and drove several blocks before pulling over to process what I had discovered. My ex-husband, my sister-in-law, and my own parents were actively working together to have my children taken away from me. They had been planning this for months, building false evidence, manipulating family members, and setting traps designed to provoke reactions they could use against me. The Thanksgiving exclusion had not been punishment for my divorce. It had been bait for a much larger trap. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed I would break down, react emotionally, and give them the evidence they needed to complete their case against me. Instead, I now had evidence of their conspiracy. The fight they wanted was about to begin, but not in the way they had planned. I spent the weekend planning carefully. The emails I had photographed revealed the scope of their conspiracy. But I needed more evidence before I could act effectively. Most importantly, I needed to protect my children from the immediate threat while building a legal defense. Monday morning, I called my friend Maria Santos, who had graduated from law school 3 years earlier and now practiced family law in the next county. We had been close in high school but had lost touch until I reached out during my divorce proceedings for general advice. "Maria," I said when she answered her office phone, "I need help, legal help. It's about my children." "Diane? What's happening?" I gave her a condensed version of the conspiracy I had uncovered, reading directly from the emails I had photographed. The silence on her end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Maria? Are you there?" "I'm here. I'm just..." She paused. "This is some of the most calculated parental alienation and evidence tampering I've ever seen. Do you have copies of those emails? Photos on my phone. Send them to me immediately. We need to document everything before they realize you know about their plan. What about my children? Are they in immediate danger? Not physical danger, but if they file those custody papers, there could be an emergency hearing where temporary arrangements are made pending investigation. You need to be prepared for that possibility." "How do I prepare?" "By staying calm, documenting everything, and letting me handle the legal strategy. Do not confront them directly. Do not give them any evidence of emotional instability they can use against you. But Maria, they're planning to file this week. That email said Mark's lawyer thinks they have enough evidence. Then we move fast. Can you come to my office this afternoon? After hanging up with Maria, I made another difficult decision. I called my children's school and requested an immediate conference with their teachers and the school counselor. I needed professional documentation of their emotional state and academic performance to counter any claims of instability or poor parenting. Mrs. Peterson, Emma's third-grade teacher, and Mr. Williams, Tyler's kindergarten teacher, both agreed to meet with me during their lunch break. The school counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, joined us in the small conference room. I need to ask you about my children's behavior and emotional state over the past few months. I began. There may be legal proceedings where their welfare becomes an issue. The teachers exchanged glances. Mrs. Peterson spoke first. Diane. Both Emma and Tyler are wonderful children. Emma is academically advanced and socially mature for her age. Tyler is energetic but well-behaved and responsive to guidance. Have you noticed any signs of neglect, emotional distress, or behavioral problems that might suggest home instability? Mr. Williams shook his head firmly. Tyler mentioned being sad about his grandparents, but otherwise he seems secure and happy. His academic progress has been excellent. Mrs. Rodriguez added, Emma did express some confusion about family relationships recently, but she speaks about you with obvious love and trust. Both children are clean, well-fed, appropriately dressed, and emotionally healthy. Would you be willing to provide written statements to that effect if necessary for legal proceedings? Absolutely, Mrs. Peterson said without hesitation. These are good kids with a good mother. Whatever legal issue you're facing, you have our full support. The relief I felt was overwhelming. At least in this area, reality aligned with truth rather than the false narrative my family had constructed. But my sense of security was shattered when I returned home to find Amanda's car in my apartment complex parking lot. She was waiting by my front door, perfectly dressed as always, her expression cold and determined. We need to talk, she said as I approached with Emma and Tyler beside me. Kids, go inside and start your homework, I instructed, unlocking the door quickly. I waited until they were safely in their bedroom before stepping back outside to face Amanda. What do you want? I want you to understand what's about to happen, she said, her voice eerily calm. Mark is filing custody papers tomorrow. Your parents are prepared to testify about your instability and financial desperation. I have documentation of your theft from the family business. Theft I didn't commit. Amanda smiled, the expression cold and predatory. Can you prove that? Because I have months of careful documentation showing systematic embezzlement that coincides exactly with your increased access to the business accounts. Why? The question came out raw and desperate. Why are you doing this to me? To my children? Because you're weak, she said simply. You had everything. A husband, a family, stability, and you threw it all away because things got a little difficult. Now you expect everyone else to support your bad choices. A little difficult? He was violent, Amanda. He hurt me and threatened the children, according to you. But there are no police reports of actual arrests, no hospital records of severe injuries, no witnesses to this alleged abuse, because I was too afraid to report it fully, because I was trying to protect my children from seeing their father arrested. Convenient excuse. But the courts will see a woman who makes accusations she can't prove while demonstrating clear patterns of dishonesty and instability. The casual cruelty in her tone was staggering. What did I ever do to make you hate me this much? You exist in a space that should belong to people who contribute to this family instead of draining it. You take attention, resources, and emotional energy away from people who matter. People like you. People like Todd. People like your parents. People who understand loyalty and commitment. Loyalty to what? To covering up abuse? To enabling violence? Amanda stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. To maintaining family stability instead of creating chaos whenever life gets challenging. And what about my children? What about their stability? Your children will be better off with people who can provide proper structure, financial security, and emotional consistency. Mark is their father. Your parents are established members of this community. I have a graduate degree and a stable marriage. You have a criminal mind and a complete lack of empathy. Amanda laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I have planning skills and follow-through. 2 things you've never demonstrated. Is that why you stole the money and framed me? Planning skills. I documented your theft and reported it appropriately. If money went missing during the time you had access to the accounts, that's hardly my fault. The gaslighting was so complete, so confident, that for a moment I wondered if she had convinced herself that her version of events was true. The emails. Amanda, I know about the emails between you and Mark. I know you planned the Thanksgiving exclusion to provoke a reaction you could use in court. I know you've been systematically building false evidence against me. For the first time, Amanda's composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. You're a liar. You're a thief. And you're about to be exposed. By who? Your family won't believe you over me. The courts will see a desperate woman making wild accusations without evidence. I have evidence. You have accusations. I have documentation, witnesses, and professional credibility. Amanda turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Diane? When this custody battle begins, you might want to consider what's best for your children instead of what's best for your ego. Supervised visitation is better than no visitation at all. After she drove away, I sat in my car for several minutes, shaking with rage and fear. The threat was real. The conspiracy was moving forward, and despite having evidence of their plan, I was still facing an uphill battle against people who had been systematically building a case against me for months. But Amanda had made one crucial error in her confidence. She had admitted to knowing about evidence that allegedly showed my theft, evidence she had supposedly discovered rather than created. If I could prove her involvement in the embezzlement, her entire credible witness persona would collapse. That evening, after my children were asleep, I called Maria again. They're accelerating the timeline. I told her. Amanda confronted me today. Mark is filing tomorrow. Then we file first. I've been preparing an emergency motion based on the emails you sent me. We're going to request protective orders for you and the children, and we're going to expose this conspiracy before they can use it against you. What if it backfires? What if the court believes their version instead of mine? Diane, those emails are smoking gun evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud and parental alienation. No judge will ignore that level of premeditation and manipulation. And my children, your children are going to learn that their mother is stronger than the people trying to hurt her. And they're going to learn that truth has a way of winning, even when lies seem more convincing. As I hung up the phone, I realized something had shifted inside me. The fear was still there, but it was now accompanied by something harder and more determined. They had chosen this fight. They had decided to destroy my reputation and steal my children based on lies and manufactured evidence. Now they were about to discover what happened when a mother fought back with truth as her weapon and justice as her goal. The real battle was about to begin. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Word had apparently spread that legal action was imminent, and my family was circling the wagons. My mother's voicemail was predictably dramatic. Diane, I don't know what lies you've been spreading, but this family will not be torn apart by your selfishness any longer. Todd's text messages were desperate. Please call me. We can work this out without lawyers. But it was Mark's voicemail that sent ice through my veins. You have 24 hours to withdraw whatever accusations you've made, or you'll regret it. Maria had moved quickly. She had filed emergency motions requesting protective orders and had included the email evidence as attachments to our court documents. By law, opposing parties had to be notified immediately when such motions were filed. My family now knew that I had proof of their conspiracy. Good, Maria said when I called her office. Let them panic. Panic leads to mistakes, and mistakes help our case. But what if they destroy evidence? What if they coordinate new lies? They can't destroy what's already been preserved legally. And if they coordinate new lies now, after being exposed, it will only make their conspiracy charges worse. Conspiracy charges. Diane, what they've done isn't just unethical. It's criminal. Fraud. Evidence tampering. Conspiracy to commit perjury. If the family court doesn't handle this appropriately, I'm recommending you file criminal charges. The idea that my own family could face criminal prosecution for their actions against me was both terrifying and satisfying. But before I could process that fully, Maria delivered more news. I've been contacted by an investigator who works with my firm. Apparently, Amanda's embezzlement of your family business is more extensive than you realized. How much more extensive? Try $15,000 over the past year. Not $3,000 over 6 months. My legs gave out, and I sat down heavily on my couch. $15,000. Amanda has been systematically draining your family's business accounts while simultaneously documenting smaller amounts that she could blame on you. She never intended for your parents to discover the full scope of her theft. Do my parents know? They do now. My investigator contacted them this morning with the evidence. How did they react? According to the investigator, your father went silent. Your mother started crying. Todd demanded to see the proof immediately. I tried to imagine my brother's reaction to learning that his wife had been stealing from his own family while framing his sister. The betrayal he must be feeling was probably similar to what I had experienced, but compounded by the realization that he had been manipulated into attacking me. Where does this leave the custody case? Significantly strengthened. Mark's case was built entirely on your family's testimony about your instability and their evidence of your financial desperation. If your family withdraws their support, and if the financial evidence is exposed as fraud, he has no case. Will they withdraw their support? Would you continue supporting someone who stole from you and lied to your face for months? The question hung in the air as my phone began ringing again. This time, the caller was Uncle Gary. Diane. His voice was heavy with emotion. I need to apologize to you. We all do. Uncle Gary, we've been played, honey. All of us. That woman, that Amanda, she's been lying to everyone for months. You know about the money. I know about everything. The investigator showed us bank records, email evidence, even recordings Amanda made of her own conversations where she laughs about manipulating your parents. Recordings. She recorded herself bragging to a friend about how easy it was to turn your family against you. How she planned to get custody of your kids because they'd be better off with people who understood proper family values. The scope of Amanda's documentation had apparently extended beyond building evidence against me. She had been so proud of her manipulation that she had recorded herself describing it. Your parents are devastated, Diane. Your father keeps saying he doesn't understand how he could have been so blind. Your mother hasn't stopped crying since she found out. And Todd's in shock. Hez talking about divorce. He keeps saying he feels sick that he helped hurt you and the kids. Uncle Gary, I need you to know that I have evidence of everything. The conspiracy, the planned custody theft, all of it. Good. Use it. Make them pay for what they did to you and those babies. Even if it means family members face legal consequences. Especially then, what Amanda did isn't family business. It's criminal business. And what the rest of us did. His voice broke. We turned our backs on our own blood based on lies. That deserves consequences too. After hanging up with Uncle Gary, I felt the first genuine hope I had experienced in months. The truth was finally coming to light, and the people I had thought lost forever were beginning to see reality clearly. But I knew Amanda would not surrender easily. My phone rang again, and Amanda's number appeared on the screen. Hello, Amanda. You have no idea what you've started. Her voice was no longer calm and controlled, but sharp with panic. You think exposing me will solve your problems? You think your family will just forgive and forget? I think my family will choose truth over lies when they're forced to see the difference. Your family will never trust you again. I've shown them who you really are. You've shown them who you really are. They're seeing that now. You'll tell them you put me up to it, that you planned the whole thing to make yourself look like a victim. Go ahead. Tell them anything you want. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence can be misinterpreted. Circumstances can be explained. Not when you recorded yourself bragging about your manipulation to a friend. The silence on Amanda's end was profound. You didn't know about that recording, did you? I continued. You were so proud of your clever plan that you couldn't resist sharing it with someone. Now that someone has shared it with investigators, you're bluffing. Am I? Then why did Uncle Gary just call me to apologize? Why did the investigator already contact my parents with bank records? Why is Todd apparently talking about divorce? Another long silence. This isn't over, Amanda finally said, her voice low and dangerous. You're right. It's not over, because now the police are involved. Because now there are criminal charges being considered. Because now everyone knows exactly what you are. What I am is someone who tried to save your children from an unfit mother. What you are is someone who stole from a family that trusted you, framed an innocent person for your crimes, and tried to destroy children's relationships with their mother for your own psychological satisfaction. Prove it. I already have. The call ended, but I knew this was not finished. Amanda had invested too much time and energy in destroying me to give up easily. Desperate people make dangerous choices, and Amanda was now very desperate indeed. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was fighting from a position of strength rather than defense. The truth was on my side. Evidence supported my version of events, and my family was beginning to understand how badly they had been deceived. Most importantly, my children were safe. Whatever happened next, Emma and Tyler would not be taken from me based on lies and manufactured evidence. The fight was not over, but the tide had turned decisively in my favor. The transformation in my family's attitude was swift and dramatic. Within 48 hours of the evidence being revealed, both my parents and Uncle Gary had contacted Maria's office to request meetings. They wanted to provide statements supporting my character and parenting, and to admit they had been manipulated by false information. My father's call was particularly moving. Deanne, I failed you as a father. Robert's voice was thick with emotion. I let someone poison my mind against my own daughter. I helped attack the best mother those children could have, all because I was too comfortable letting other people think for me. You were brave to leave, Mark. You were right to protect Emma and Tyler. You were strong when we should have supported you. And instead, we punished you for being stronger than we were. I never wanted to fight with you and Mom. We started the fight. Honey, we chose to believe lies over loving our own child. That's on us, not on you. My mother's apology was more complicated, colored by her devastation at discovering how completely Amanda had manipulated her maternal instincts. I thought I was protecting those babies, Patricia sobbed during our phone conversation. Amanda showed me pictures of them looking tired, told me stories about you struggling to cope, convinced me that you needed intervention. I thought being tough with you would motivate you to accept help. What kind of help? Counseling for your anger issues. Financial assistance with strings attached. Mark's involvement in the children's daily care. I thought we were staging an intervention, not participating in a conspiracy. The distinction was important for my mother's psychological recovery, though the impact on my children and me had been the same regardless of intent. Todd's reaction was the most intense. He had moved out of his shared home with Amanda and was staying with my parents while he consulted divorce attorneys. His guilt over his role in the conspiracy was eating him alive. I should have known, he said, when we met for coffee 3 days after the truth emerged. I should have questioned why Amanda was so interested in documenting everything about your life. I should have wondered why she seemed so eager to find problems with your parenting. She was convincing, Todd. She had evidence, explanations. and she appealed to everyone's genuine concern for the children. But I knew you. I grew up with you. I should have known you would never steal money or neglect Emma and Tyler. You were trying to be a good husband. You trusted someone you loved. That's not a character flaw. It is when trusting that person means hurting my sister and her kids. The legal situation was resolving quickly in my favor. Mark's attorney had withdrawn from the case after reviewing the evidence of conspiracy and fraud. Without family testimony and financial documentation to support his claims, Mark had no basis for requesting custody modification. Maria had also filed criminal complaints against Amanda for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. The district attorney's office was taking the case seriously, particularly given the systematic nature of the evidence, manipulation, and the attempt to separate children from their mother through false accusations. But the most healing moment came when I brought Emma and Tyler to see their grandparents for the first time since the disastrous Thanksgiving dinner. My mother had prepared Emma's favorite cookies and Tyler's preferred snacks. The house was decorated with drawings the children had made over the years. Artwork my mother had apparently saved but never displayed. She had created a visual reminder of the grandchildren's presence in her life, a presence she had nearly lost through her own choices. "Grandma," Emma said carefully, "are you still mad at Mommy?" Patricia knelt down to Emma's eye level, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, sweetheart. I was never really mad at Mommy. I was confused and scared, and I made terrible mistakes. But I was wrong, and Mommy was right, and I'm sorry I hurt your feelings." Tyler, always more direct, asked, "Does this mean we get to come to Christmas dinner?" "This means you get to come to every dinner," Robert said firmly. "This means you're part of this family forever, no matter what anyone says. Even Aunt Amanda?" Tyler asked. The adults exchanged glances. Tyler's innocence in asking about Amanda highlighted how much my children had been protected from understanding the full scope of the adult betrayal and manipulation. "Aunt Amanda made some very bad choices," I explained carefully. "She's going to have to face consequences for those choices. But that doesn't change how much your grandparents and Uncle Todd love you." "Will she go to jail?" Emma asked, with the matter-of-fact curiosity of an 8-year-old. "That will be up to a judge to decide," I replied. "But what's most important is that our family is healing and learning to trust each other again." "And Daddy?" Tyler asked. "Will he stop trying to take us away?" The question pierced my heart. My children had been aware of the custody threat, had been living with the fear that they might be separated from me. The trauma Amanda's conspiracy had inflicted extended beyond the adult relationships to impact the security and emotional well-being of innocent children. "Daddy isn't going to take you away," I promised. "You're safe with me. And that's not going to change." Uncle Gary, who had been quietly observing the reunion, spoke up with characteristic wisdom. "You know what I've learned from all this," he said, looking around at our gathered family. "I've learned that love isn't about never making mistakes. Love is about admitting your mistakes, making amends, and doing better next time." "And what about people who hurt families on purpose?" Emma asked, clearly thinking about Amanda. "People who hurt families on purpose have to learn that there are consequences for hurting others," Gary replied. "But our job isn't to punish them. Our job is to protect each other and rebuild what was damaged." Over the following weeks, the healing process continued gradually. My parents attended family therapy sessions to address their susceptibility to manipulation and their tendency to avoid difficult conversations. Todd worked through his guilt while navigating his divorce from Amanda, who was facing both criminal charges and civil lawsuits from the family business. Mark made one final attempt to contact me, but his approach was dramatically different from his previous threatening stance. He requested a meeting through attorneys, where he admitted that his involvement in the conspiracy had been motivated by anger rather than genuine concern for the children's welfare. "I wanted to hurt you for leaving me," he said during the supervised meeting with lawyers present. "Amanda convinced me that I could use your family against you. But I never wanted to actually take the kids away permanently. But you were willing to put them through the trauma of custody battles and family division to satisfy your need for revenge." "Yes," he admitted simply. "And that makes me a terrible father." His honesty was unexpected and, In its way, healing. For the first time since our divorce, Mark acknowledged the damage his behavior had caused rather than justifying it or blaming me. The criminal case against Amanda proceeded through the courts with efficiency that surprised everyone involved. Her systematic documentation of her own manipulation, combined with the email evidence and financial records, made prosecution straightforward. She ultimately pleaded guilty to embezzlement and conspiracy charges in exchange for a reduced sentence that included restitution, community service, and mandatory psychological counseling. But perhaps the most significant transformation was in my children's sense of security and family belonging. Emma and Tyler gradually returned to their natural confidence and joy, no longer walking on eggshells around family members or worrying about being excluded from gatherings. "Mommy," Emma said one evening while I was tucking her into bed, "I'm glad the bad stuff happened." "Why, sweetheart?" "Because now I know you'll fight for us no matter what. And I know our family is stronger when we tell the truth." Her wisdom, born from witnessing both betrayal and recovery, reminded me that children are remarkably resilient when they feel protected and valued. The legal victory had been important, but the family healing was what would matter for the rest of our lives. 6 months later, our new Thanksgiving looked nothing like the painful dinner that had started this entire ordeal. Instead of 12 formal place settings in my parents' dining room, we gathered around my small kitchen table in my modest apartment. The china was mismatched. The centerpiece was a simple arrangement Emma and Tyler had made from leaves they collected in the park, and the meal was a collaborative effort where everyone contributed according to their abilities rather than their assigned family roles. My mother brought her famous stuffing, but she also brought humility and a genuine appreciation for being included rather than taking family harmony for granted. My father carved the turkey I had prepared, but he also spent the afternoon building a blanket fort with his grandchildren, finally learning to prioritize relationships over avoiding conflict. Todd attended without Amanda, who was serving her court-mandated community service and attending twice-weekly therapy sessions. My brother had emerged from his marriage to Amanda as a more thoughtful and independent person, someone who now questioned rather than simply accepting what others told him. "I'm grateful this year for learning the difference between being loyal and being manipulated," Todd said when we shared what we were thankful for around the table. Uncle Gary, who had become the acknowledged moral center of our family, raised his glass of apple cider in a toast. "I'm grateful for the courage it takes to admit when you're wrong and the strength it takes to rebuild what you've damaged. I'm grateful for second chances," my father added quietly. "I'm grateful for a daughter who fought for truth when we chose comfortable lies," my mother said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Emma, now 9 years old and more confident than ever, declared, "I'm grateful that our family learned how to love each other better." Tyler, 6, and wonderfully direct as always, announced. When my turn came, I looked around the table at faces that had been lost to me just months earlier, at children who were secure in their family's love, at relationships that had been tested and proven strong enough to survive even systematic betrayal. I'm grateful for the lesson that standing up for yourself and your children isn't just your right, it's your responsibility, I said, and I'm grateful that truth really does have a way of winning, even when lies seem more convincing. The legal aftermath had concluded with complete vindication. Amanda had served 4 months in county jail, paid full restitution to the family business, and was now working in a supervised accounting position while completing 3 years of probation. Her marriage to Todd had ended in divorce, with Todd receiving primary custody of their twin sons. Mark had voluntarily agreed to supervised visitation with Emma and Tyler, acknowledging that his attempts to use them as weapons against me disqualified him from unsupervised parenting responsibilities. The children saw him twice a month in a neutral setting with a social worker present, arrangements that prioritized their emotional security over his convenience. But the most significant transformation was in my own sense of empowerment and family security. I had learned that I was strong enough to protect my children from anyone who tried to harm them, including people who claimed to love us. I had discovered that documentation, evidence, and legal advocacy could triumph over manipulation and lies when used strategically and persistently. My work situation had stabilized into a full-time position with benefits, partly because I no longer had family members sabotaging my professional reputation behind the scenes. Emma and Tyler were thriving academically and socially, their confidence restored by the knowledge that their mother would fight for them, no matter what obstacles arose. The support group I had started for single mothers facing family pressure had grown to include 12 regular members. Women who had been isolated and undermined by relatives who disapproved of their life choices found strength and practical advice in our weekly meetings. The most important thing I learned, I told the group during one of our sessions, is that people who truly love you will support your efforts to protect yourself and your children. People who try to punish you for escaping harm don't actually love you. They love controlling you. Patricia, who had asked to attend one of these meetings to better understand the dynamics she had participated in, listened quietly as other mothers shared stories of family rejection and manipulation. "I thought I was helping," she said when invited to speak. "I thought being tough with my daughter would motivate her to make better choices. I never understood that she was already making the best choices possible under impossible circumstances." Her participation in the support group had become part of her own healing process, a way to understand how family pressure could be used to enable abuse rather than prevent it. The community response had been overwhelmingly supportive once the truth about Amanda's conspiracy became public knowledge. The small-town gossip network that had initially spread rumors about my fitness as a mother now served to restore my reputation and isolate Amanda from social acceptance. Local businesses that had participated in the family accounting firm's client base made a point of continuing their relationships with my parents while making it clear that Amanda was not welcome in their establishments. The social consequences of her actions extended beyond legal punishment to genuine community rejection of her behavior. But perhaps the most healing aspect of our recovery was the new traditions we created to replace the old dynamics. Instead of large family gatherings where attendance was mandatory and criticism was common, we established smaller, more frequent visits where genuine connection was prioritized over performance. Emma and Tyler now spent every other weekend with their grandparents, but the time was filled with activities they enjoyed rather than lessons about proper behavior. My parents had learned to follow their grandchildren's interests instead of trying to shape them according to their own expectations. "Grandpa taught me how to use his woodworking tools," Tyler announced proudly after one such weekend. "We made a birdhouse for Mommy's balcony. Grandma and I learned how to make friendship bracelets," Emma added. "She's going to teach my friend Sarah next week." The transformation in my parents from rigid authority figures to engaged, responsive grandparents had been remarkable to witness. They approached their relationships with Emma and Tyler with a humility born from recognizing how close they had come to losing these precious connections entirely. My own relationship with them remained cautious but genuine. Trust, once broken so completely, required time and consistent positive behavior to rebuild. But the foundation was solid now, built on honesty rather than performance, on acceptance rather than conditional approval. The legal system had worked as intended, protecting children from false accusations and holding adults accountable for criminal behavior. But the real justice had been the restoration of family relationships based on truth rather than manipulation. "Mommy," Emma said as we cleaned up after our Thanksgiving meal, "do you think Aunt Amanda learned not to hurt families anymore?" The question reflected my daughter's generous heart and her desire to believe that people could change for the better. "I think Aunt Amanda is learning about consequences," I replied carefully. "Whether she chooses to change depends on whether she's willing to face the truth about her actions." "Do you think she's sorry?" "I think she's sorry she got caught. Whether she's sorry for hurting people is something only she knows. I hope she learns to be nicer," Emma said with the innocent faith that defined her character. "I hope so too, sweetheart. But our job isn't to fix people who hurt us. Our job is to protect ourselves and build good relationships with people who treat us well." As I tucked my children into their beds that night, listening to their excited chatter about the day and their plans for the upcoming Christmas season, I reflected on how completely our lives had transformed. 6 months ago, we had been isolated from family support, facing false accusations and the threat of custody loss. Tonight, we were surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us, secure in relationships built on honesty and mutual respect. The lesson I would carry forward was simple but profound. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most will try to tear you down. But standing up for yourself and your children isn't just your right, it's your responsibility. True family isn't about blood or tradition. It's about respect, support, and genuine love. When you refuse to accept less than you deserve, you teach everyone around you how to love better. The fight had been difficult, but it had been worth it. My children were safe. My family was healing, and justice had prevailed over manipulation and lies. Most importantly, Emma and Tyler had learned that their mother would protect them no matter what, and that truth and courage could overcome even the most sophisticated deception. That knowledge would serve them well throughout their lives, long after the specific details of this crisis had faded into family history. But I wanted to hear from you. Have you ever faced a situation where family members chose lies over loyalty? How did you protect yourself and your children when the people who were supposed to support you became the ones trying to tear you down? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help another mother who's facing similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help other people find it when they need encouragement. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming family betrayal and finding strength in difficult times. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that they're not alone in facing family manipulation and that justice really can prevail when you fight for truth. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of a community that supports truth over convenience and courage over comfort. Remember, you are stronger than the people trying to bring you down, and your children are worth fighting for, no matter how difficult the battle becomes. Until next time, keep protecting what matters most, and never stop believing that you deserve to be treated with respect and love.